Alright, so tonight we'll go ahead and move on to the back of the bike, grease the suspension linkages down underneath here, shock linkage, all that, because it does not come with much grease in it when you buy these either. Also a good thing to do in the winter. Good maintenance to do to your bike after a summer of riding it. So we'll go ahead and get started on that. So on the back here, on the linkages, you got 4 nuts and bolts you got to take off. One there, up here, and right here. This will be the bottom shock mount. Then you got your wishbones here, and then the pivot mount bolt there. Alright, so we'll go ahead and start by taking off the 2 bolts that hold the wishbones on. Kind of lift up on the rear wheel a little bit, get some pressure off of it to make the bolts come out easier. And if you look on this bolt, you got a couple flat spots here. This bolt's holding herself on the other side, so you just have to take the nut loose. Makes it a lot easier. Slide that down out of the way. We'll go ahead and take the shock nut and then the other nut off now. Same thing, move the rear wheel a little bit and give you a little more room, or give you a little play in your pressure off of it. Now we've got this off. We'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and wipe this down real good and get all the dirt off of it, because you don't want no dirt getting in there on the bearings when you go to grease them. Alright, so now we got the got it off, got it wiped down pretty good. Got it good and clean. We'll go ahead next and we'll pop these caps out. And then we'll grease it. You do want to be careful when you take these out. This does have needle bearings in it, and they will fall apart. The needles will come out, and you want to make sure you'll be able to get them back in. We'll do this one at a time. We'll take one out, grease it up, and then put it back in. These have been greased before, so they're not going to need a whole lot. But I don't know if you can tell too good. These are needle bearings inside of here. You can see them in there on each side. You just want to run a good coat of grease around them. Make sure everything's good and clean. Make sure this is clean. Don't have no dirt on it when you go back with it. The sleeve that goes in there. This is a waterproof grease I'm putting on this. Just gives a good coat in there. So make sure this is good and clean. Don't want no dirt on it. And we can go ahead and put a thin layer of grease around this as well. Slide it back through. Make sure these are good and clean. Put the caps back on it. Move to the next one. This one's needle bearings as well, 2 rolls of them. On this last one, sometimes it's a little harder because it's small. You can get your little screwdriver in there and pop the caps off. This one's just got 1 roll of bearings in it. This one, the shaft's made onto that. Shaft and the cap on that one side's one piece. Pop back in there. Also, when you get done here, you want to wipe off all the grease you can. Make sure this is good and clean, because the more grease that's out here, the more dirt's going to stick to it. So you do want to clean it up good before you put it back on the bike as well. Alright, now we're ready to go back in with these. You want to do the same thing with the bolts. You want to make sure they're good and clean. You can put you a little bit of grease on the bolts as well. Help for the next time you take it apart, help the bolts come out easier. I'll go ahead and put a thin layer of grease on the bolts here. Remember, got to lift up on the swing arm some, so you can get these bolts back, all this line back up. Got that. Now there's also bearings in the wishbone part here on the big end. The same setup that we had up there with the other one. Got a big needle bearing on this end. Same thing on that end. Go ahead and put a little grease on that. Get that greased up and ready to go back on now. Bolt lubed up. Top one slid in. You do have to pick up on the rear wheel a little bit just to get everything lined up on this part as well. All went back pretty smooth there. You can see the flat spots. You got to line up. Make sure the bolts are all the way in with the flat spots in there. That way you can tighten it up without holding it. Alright, so now we just got to put our nuts back on and tighten them. We will torque these. These torque specs will be different depending on the bike. These right here, the 3 big nuts here, the 2 on the wishbone and the 1 on the pivot back here, torques to 44 foot-pounds. The lower shock mounting nut, the smaller nut there, it's going to torque to 26 foot-pounds on this bike. If you do want to check the specs on your bike, because I'm sure they all are different. Now it goes down to 26 for the shock nut. Alright. And now we got all our linkages greased. We'll wipe all the grease away. Come off on the bolts when we stuck them through. And that's it on the linkages.